Let's go back, way back, before history, before writing, to a world that was millions of years in the past. It was a world defined not by what was there, but by what wasn't. No cities, no villages, not a single man-made light to break up an endless, absolute darkness. This was the world of our earliest ancestors. And this is the story of the one discovery that literally ignited our future.
You have to understand, in that ancient world, sunset wasn't just the end of the day. It was a total shift in reality. Darkness wasn't just an absence of light. It felt like a physical presence. It brought a deep, biting cold, and with it, a constant, immediate danger. For early humans, every single night was a desperate fight for survival.
So let's really try and picture this. Before fire, hominins like Homo erectus were not the top of the food chain, not even close. They were vulnerable, they were exposed, and their lives were completely controlled by the cycle of the sun. Their very existence was incredibly fragile.
Think about the complete flip that happened every single evening. During the day, our ancestors could move around, they could find food, hunt, and scavenge. But the second that sun went down, the roles were completely reversed. They became the hunted, huddled together in whatever shelter they could find, just listening to the sounds of the true masters of the night moving outside. Life was just this constant struggle for energy and safety. You're talking about small, nomadic groups with simple stone tools living in caves if they were lucky. Food was a huge problem. Raw meat is incredibly tough. It takes a ton of energy to digest, and it's full of parasites and bacteria. And with no way to generate warmth, they were basically trapped, confined only to the warmest parts of the planet. For thousands and thousands of years, fire wasn't a tool, it was a monster. It was this terrifying, unpredictable force of nature that demanded only one response: you run.
I mean, just imagine seeing a lightning strike hit a dry savanna. The world just explodes into this roaring wall of flame. For an early human, that wasn't something to be studied. It was pure, overwhelming power that ate everything in its path. It just reinforced this deep primal fear.
But then, over countless generations of just watching, that deep-seated fear started to mix with something else, a new awareness. A huge psychological shift began to happen, and it was all sparked by one simple but absolutely world-changing observation. And this was the big breakthrough. Our ancestors started to realize that the very thing that scared them also scared the saber-toothed cats and the giant hyenas that were hunting them. The source of their greatest fear could actually become their greatest protection, a wall of light and heat against all the things that stalked the night. And then came another profound discovery, probably by total accident. An ancestor, scavenging after a wildfire, finds an animal that's been caught in the blaze, and they realize the meat is different. It's soft, it's easier to chew, it tastes better. This wasn't just a better meal, it was the very beginning of a biological revolution. Okay, so recognizing fire's potential is one thing, but capturing it, controlling it, and actually moving it, that's a challenge on a whole different level. This was the next great human project, not just using fire where you found it, but figuring out how to bring the flame home. This critical middle step is what researchers call fire foraging. See, early humans couldn't make fire yet, not from scratch. They were completely dependent on nature to provide it. Their monumental task was become keepers of a flame they themselves could not light. Just picture that, a small group carefully picking up a smoldering branch from a wildfire that's dying down. That walk back to the cave would have been this slow, unbelievably careful procession. The goal wasn't just to get back, it was to get back with that living flame. Because if you let it die, you were plunged right back into the cold and the dark. And look, this isn't just some nice story. We have proof. In places like the Wonderwork Cave in South Africa, archaeologists have found charred bones and plant ash that give us hard evidence for the controlled use of fire going back at least 1 million years. This is the dawn of a completely new human era. The moment they brought that controlled flame into the cave, everything changed. That first hearth, that first campfire, didn't just change how our ancestors lived their lives. It started to fundamentally change who they were, both biologically and socially. Suddenly, the cave wasn't just a dark shelter. It was a sanctuary. The fire was an invisible shield keeping predators at bay. It was a reliable source of warmth against the deadly cold. And in that circle of light, the first real community center was born.
a place to gather, to share food, and to build the complex social bonds that make us human. But maybe the most incredible change of all happened inside our own bodies. There's a scientific theory that explains this called the expensive tissue hypothesis. And the basic idea is this: your gut and your brain are both incredibly expensive organs. They use up a ton of energy. And, evolutionarily speaking, it's really hard to have a big version of both.
Here's the trade-off. Before cooking, you needed a large, energy-hungry gut just to break down all that tough, raw food. But cooking basically outsources the first part of digestion. It breaks down fibers and proteins before you even take a bite. This meant our ancestors could evolve a smaller, much more efficient gut. And all that extra energy that was saved, it could be redirected to fuel the growth of our most expensive organ of all, the brain. In a very real sense, fire fed our minds.
So for hundreds of thousands of years, humans were fire keepers, but they weren't fire makers. They were still dependent on lightning strikes or volcanoes. The final, crucial step was to gain independence, to learn how to create fire whenever and wherever they wanted.
So how'd they do it? Well, one of the main ways was friction. Through tons of trial and error, our ancestors figured out that if you spin a hard stick really fast against a softer piece of wood, you generate incredible heat. That heat creates a tiny bit of smoldering dust, an ember, which, if you carefully feed it with dry grass or leaves, can be coaxed into a flame.
The other method was percussion. Hominins had been banging rocks together for millions of years to make tools. At some point, someone must have noticed that striking certain rocks, like flint against a mineral like pyrite, created a hot, bright spark. And then they made the connection. If you could get one of those sparks to land on something dry and flammable, you could start a fire.
But you have to appreciate just how long this all took. This wasn't some quick invention. The journey from just controlling a natural flame to creating one on demand took hundreds of thousands of years. It was this slow accumulation of knowledge, likely passed down across multiple human species.
When you really step back and look at the whole picture, mastering fire wasn't just another technological step. It was the catalyst. It was the fundamental spark for everything that would eventually make us human, setting our species on a completely new path. Its legacy is literally written into our DNA and our history. It gave us the energy to grow our brains. It was the portable furnace that let us leave the warm climates of Africa and populate the entire frozen globe. It became our first factory, used to harden wooden spears, and, much later, to forge metal. And maybe most importantly, it's what drew us together around the hearth, creating the very idea of a community. You know, that first spark, captured from a wildfire a million years ago, it's still burning. It burns in our engines, in our power plants, and in that restless curiosity that drives us to explore. Which leaves us with one last big question. Did we just stumble upon fire as a useful tool? Or was it a fundamental force of nature that unlocked something that was already inside us, just waiting for a spark to be set free?